Have you heard the phrase heat pump? Do you live in an apartment or a house where in the wintertime the heating method is a heat pump? And you kind of wonder, it seems to work. I stay pretty warm. Wonder how that thing works. Going to show you now how to quantify the performance of a heat pump and also a little bit about how it works. And so this is entitled Heat Pump COP, Coefficient of Performance. And so, of course, we're going to start with the sort of the basic schematic of what's going on here. How can we, how do you run a refrigeration cycle and heat your house? Well, we're gonna see about that. So what is a heat pump? And I'm moving my Zoom my Zoom menu around so I can see my slide here. And so let's see, let's start at the sketch. Let's start at the schematic over here first. So we've got a basic refrigeration cycle. So you should recognize this, our sketch here, the schematic as a basic refrigeration cycle. We're transferring heat from cold to hot, okay? And so let's label what is cold and what is hot and what are we doing? Well, the cold reservoir is the cool surroundings in the wintertime. And the little picture over here kind of depicts that. There's the blue, there's your cool surroundings. And so we're actually pulling heat, believe it or not, we're pulling heat out of the cool surroundings by way of some equipment that's operating like a refrigerator. Okay, and so that equipment is requiring power to run. So in the real world, this is the electric power required to run a compressor. And you're going to get a lot better. You're going to learn the ins and outs of that in a later chapter. And then what we do is we combine that heat that we just drew in from the outside with the W dot required, and we dump those forms of energy in terms of heat transfer up to a higher temperature reservoir, which in this case is your warm inside your house. And so there over in the picture, here's you. I should have drawn a stick figure over here of you standing in your house with this heat pump blowing, it says heated air. Now, in a lot of cases, the way these heat pumps work, it might not be hot air. In fact, it will not be hot air. It will be heated or warmed air. But anyway, here's the picture of you. Here's the stick figure. Here's you up in TH to try to remember in your head. That's the warm inside the house. Over here in my picture then, I got to move my Zoom menu over here. In the picture, I'm reminding you here, I've got an electric cord hooked up to this outside device, and that's reminding you that the compressor that's housed up in this outside unit requires electric power to run. And here's a photograph of an outside heat pump unit, and it's comprised essentially of an evaporator and the compressor that I'm talking about. So there's two major components of the heat pump that are outside your house, and then a couple of other components are inside your house that are depicted here in red. Okay, enough of that. But this is a heat pump is basically a refrigeration system. You've picked that up by looking at the sketch, the schematic. Say, oh yeah, that's refrigeration. Oh, here, my block arrow. See, my block arrow is going around counterclockwise. It takes power to run. That's why I've got that counterclockwise arrow. Okay, so a heat pump is as simple as a refrigeration system that transfers heat from the cold surroundings into a warm space, which is your house. And it does that at the expense of requiring power to run. All right, let's go through that repeating drill. Let's imagine that you own a home that uses a heat pump for winter heating. That's easy to imagine, okay? The two questions, what's your main objective as a homeowner? And is there any expense to run a heat pump? And of course, you know what the answer is, yes. And I've shown, of course, it's going to take electric power to run it. And let's see, your objective is to heat your home. Okay, so objective to keep yourself warm inside your house. Any expense to run it? Yeah, it's the electric bill. And so you know what's coming. The energy sought and the energy that costs. And so the energy sought is the main objective. It's Q dot H. It's that heat added to the house. And what's the energy that costs? It's the power it takes to run the compressor of the heat pump. That's the energy that costs. The electricity power cost. Okay, got it. Back to our schematic. Let's label energy sought and energy that cost to keep ourselves on track. Okay, here's our schematic. Here's U, the stick figure in the warm space. Okay, the surroundings, low temperature reservoir, energy sought. It's up here. It's Q dot H this time, going up to the high temperature reservoir. Energy that cost, same old thing for a refrigeration cycle. The power it takes to run the thing. All right. As a courtesy, I've written down the first law. First law for steady operation of a system operating in a cycle. Q dot H minus Q dot L. The difference between those two is W dot net. All right, let's do an example problem. No, let's not. Let's define formally the coefficient of performance for a heat pump, and it is going to be different than that of a refrigerator. All right, so this is a key. I've labeled it important because many students overlook this, and that's why they blow their quizzes or miss some test problems. Let's get, so now we've got, for a heat pump, we've got a new Greek letter. It's gamma. It is not Y. It is not the letter Y. It is Greek letter gamma, HP, heat pump. Gamma of the heat pump is energy sought over the energy that costs. Very repetitive. Energy sought over the energy that costs. All right, so we can figure this out from our sketch, okay? The energy sought, Q dot H, and the energy that costs, W dot net. We've got that now ingrained. We've got this learned now. Now, if you want to apply the first law, and many times we will. So the numerator stays the same. The denominator transformed from W dot net into Q dot H minus Q dot L. Just as a courtesy, I've drawn on the right-hand side. Let's say you have a piston and cylinder that's executing one single cycle, a little unusual for a heat pump, of course, but it's the same approach. So let's look. Gamma of the heat pump is the energy sought, Q dot H, over the energy that costs, W dot net. And in many cases, in quizzes and tests, you're going to also write down the first law, transforming W dot net into Q dot H minus Q dot L. That's statement of the first law for the denominator. Okay. Now we're going to do, I think we're going to do an example problem. All right. I did a copy and paste, and look at this. I'm still, so darn it, practice with first law and thermal efficiency. Well, that's wrong. Very sloppy on my copy and paste. It's a heat pump. So we're going to get the coefficient of performance of a heat pump. Gosh. All right. So let's see we're given. Let's say we're given 12 units coming into our home, and we're removing 9 units from the surroundings. Our job is to find how much power do we need and what's the coefficient of performance of the heat pump. All right. Let's see. All we have to do is just look at our sketch now. We're getting really good at this. I've got 12 going out here. I've got to make up 12 going in. So I've got 9 here, 3. So W dot net is 3. Just like that's a familiar sounding example problem, isn't it? Got 12 going up here, 3 and 9. What is the coefficient of performance for the heat pump? Energy sought over the energy that costs. It's going to be 12 over 3. 12 over 3. The coefficient of performance for our heat pump is 4. Let's see how we did. Okay, yep, W dot net 3. We did that with our eyes. Method 1, energy sought over the energy that cost. 12 over 3. Yep, it's 4. Got it. Or method 2, we're just going to use the formula. Okay, it's 12, Q dot H, 12 over the denominator, Q dot H minus Q dot L. Well, that's 3. 12 over 3. Well, that's 4. Got it. So recognize again, coefficient of performance for a heat pump is going to be a value greater than 1. It's not a percentage. So shame on me for copying and pasting, thank goodness, at least I caught it on this slide. Practice with first law and COP. Shame on me for not catching it in the previous slide. Darn it. All right, well, I'm getting off track, but you get the idea. If you're good at drawing the schematic and you're good at, let's see, measure performance is energy sought over the energy that costs, then you've got this stuff nailed. And you don't have to rely so much on a formula sheet. Alternative heat pump configuration. So I wanted to point out my previous sketch, that is the traditional residential heat pump arrangement where the equipment's sitting out there outside and it's pulling in heat from the surroundings around you, above ground. The outside air is pulling heat away from the outside air. That's the traditional residential heat pump arrangement. Now, some people and some commercial organizations that have a little more money than regular people will dig deep trenches down in the earth, and they'll get pretty deep in the earth, at least about 5 feet below ground level. So at least below the frost line. And you know that below the frost line, the ground is at a higher temperature than the outside surroundings in the cold winter, right? So you can tap into a TL that's a higher number than the outside surroundings, so that for a geothermal heat pump or ground source heat pump, the ground temperature is bigger than the surroundings. And in the upcoming section in Chapter 5, coming up at the end of Chapter 5, you're going to be able to quantify that the coefficient of performance for a heat pumping using this method, a geothermal heat pump or a ground source heat pump, is going to be better performance in the cold of winter than the traditional residential heat pump. And so that's a very powerful and cool result of being able to look at different designs and studying the economics of installing a geothermal heat pump compared to a traditional residential heat pump. And you're going to be able to do this at the end of Chapter 5. So a couple of configurations are possible in the real world. Okay, so what did we cover in this video? We defined the heat pump coefficient of performance, also called COP, of the heat pump. We're on that same tried and true practice of the measure of performance is the energy sought over the energy that costs. If you couple that understanding with the heat pump schematic, you can figure out the rest. You've got it nailed. Okay, and so that's why I strongly recommend you take this approach. Get things into your head so you don't have to rely so much on a formula sheet. So that completes our measures of performance for our 3 basic systems operating in a cycle: a power plant or refrigeration cycle, and a heat pump that operates on the refrigeration cycle, but the performance is measured differently because the objective is different. Next video, we're going to recap those previous 3 videos.